I was watching Anna Howard's video on agency, which is called something like Everything is Better When You Realize All the Rules Are Made Up, which is actually more about how having high agency and having a initiative or a confidence that you can figure things out and actually pursue a life. It's about life coming through you rather than at you. That whole idea really spun my gears in my brain, and I had some thoughts, so I decided I was going to make a video. I'm also super late, so this might be a little bit of a rush and a bit of a muddled idea, and it's all a bit nascent in my mind, so forgive me if some of this is clunky and maybe not exactly what I mean. But I was thinking about this idea of agency because the only other areas in my life that I really hear about high agency is in a lot of entrepreneurial or startup world stuff. And both of those things kind of started to coalesce in my mind because the places that I feel the most trapped by the invisible rules of society are actually around worrying what other people might think. And you might think, oh, I do YouTube and whatever, and I've spent a lot of my life doing things that are kind of embarrassing before you get success. The thing about doing online content creation, especially when I was doing it, is it was weird, full stop, even if you were really successful, because most people didn't really respect it as a art form or a media platform. And now it's somewhat different, but it is kind of the same, which is that trying is embarrassing and trying to achieve something, especially in public, is embarrassing. And then once you achieve it and gain some sort of success, then it's no longer embarrassing. But all of that to say, I'm never embarrassed by that type of thing. And I'm not worried about what people are thinking when it comes to embarrassment or living a more unconventional life. The thing that I feel the most trapped by in my own life, the worries that I have about what people will think, is always about worrying if people think I am a good person. And I was thinking a lot about this because there are certain times where I feel like I really critically analyze whether or not something fits with my values. And I spend a lot of time worrying about that, whether or not something fits with my values and what my values are and how I can reconcile different things that I do or different ways that I exist with my ethical implications and my values, including things like just living in Britain. So all of this is the type of stuff that really worries me, and I feel like I do I spend an unreasonable, not unreasonable, maybe more than average amount of time thinking about whether or not something fits my values and whether or not I'm a good person. And what I feel trapped by is the worry of thinking, worry of what other people think of me in terms of whether or not they think I'm a good person. And that's the one piece that I feel really low agency in. If something feels if there's an area that is commonly regarded, or even people have a shorthand to thinking, that's probably problematic when they hear about it, I feel a little embarrassed by it or a little less willing to publicly talk about it. So I'll give you a more concrete example. I think that there have been a lot of really life changing books in my life. And some of those books are seen as maybe classic hustle bro, toxic boy kind of books. One of which would be Deep Work by Cal Newport, which is this book. I actually have it right here. Which is this book, Deep Work by Cal Newport, which is a book that's just sort of it's just a pretty normal productivity related book, which talks about how we live in a world that has a lot of problems when it comes to if you're trying to do focused work, that the world is a distracted one that is going to try and distract you. And so one thing that you can really do is try and cultivate an environment in which you can continue to do focused work, whether that's creative work or problem solving. And the world is going to try and attack that focused period of time. And it really changed the way I think about work and also the way I think about how to organize my life. And I think it was completely revolutionary for me. And the thing I feel sort of a little more apprehensive about is in certain communities or certain people that I know would hear someone reading productivity self-help and automatically think unfairly of them. They'll think that they are maybe not a good person in some way, or have these other traits that they associate with some other people who they consider to be bad in some way. And I I think that worry is the worry that is somewhat keeps me confined in terms of pursuing the things that are just deeply of my interest, because I don't think there is anything wrong with reading self-help. And I think that sure, like some people will be bad people who will read self-help because they are really in pursuit of power for nefarious ends, or money for nefarious ends, and this productivity world attracts some of those people for the wrong reasons. But also, I think that there is real value and honor in labor and doing and really doing stuff for in order to produce value or ingenuity or creativity, because that's how society progresses, and all of the great achievements of society come through people who are in pursuit of of something, and in pursuit of doing really meaningful work. And that's one example of what I mean when I say that, like, sometimes I just worry about the optics of whether or not people will think I'm a good person. You know, if I'm a guy that reads a lot of like hustle bro, productivity, startup, entrepreneurship stuff, which is associated with money, and then money is associated with greed, and people might think of me as someone who's extremely greedy, let's say, that bothers me in a way that actually constricts my behavior. Like, I will change my behavior. Maybe I won't read a book that I'm interested in because it might, what does it say if I've read that type of book? Or what does it say if I'm interested in exploring this type of thing? And that, I think, is a real trap in my life. I feel really concerned that it's a way that I am continuing to exhibit quite low agency. I'm controlled by society's invisible rules rather than deeply what I believe in, and what I feel is right. Because and I think spending energy on being perceived as a good person is is not intention it's not necessarily directly in tension with actually being a good person, but it does rob you of some of the energy that you should be putting towards actually being a good person. And I've been thinking a lot about this, especially because of the Anna Howard video, because I think of Anna Howard as someone who appeals to a very different audience to, let's say, Alex Hormozy, who is this multi-millionaire hustle bro guy. Basically, he's an entrepreneur. I mean, I don't want to call him a hustle bro because I think that has negative connotations. But basically, he is an entrepreneur who's really interested in building businesses. And I think Anna Howard appeals to a completely different demographic. I think the overlap between someone who watches Anna Howard and someone who watches Alex Hormozy is maybe just me, and maybe like people like me. But the thing I found interesting is that these lessons are very universal about agency, and they are filtered through these messengers that are framing it in different ways that appeal to different people. And neither one is bad, but I think that the perception of these two people will be seen as very different from the outside. And I think I want to really be less self-conscious about my curiosity and my wanting to seek knowledge from all areas and all types of people, because I feel I have faith in my ability to critically engage with the media that I consume and the information that I receive. And I feel confident in my ability to continue to compare that against my values. And maybe I don't need to worry at all about how that comes across, because as long as I continue to be faithful to my values, I don't think it matters if people think less of me or think differently of me. I don't think that should matter, because it matters what I think of myself and how it aligns with my values. The only criticism that I should really be paying attention to is the one that I agree with, rather than one that I don't agree with but feel constrained by because of some moral judgment that they are putting on me, or not even putting on me in particular, but putting on people who have done a certain thing like me. For example, reading some productivity book or whatever. I'll give you maybe a more clear example. There's this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I haven't read it, but I think that there is a perception of the type of person who reads this book. But ultimately, reading a book says nothing about you, because it is a way to seek knowledge. And reading How to Win Friends and Influence People, I don't think is wrong. And I don't think anyone actually, if you challenge them on it, I don't think anyone would think this is wrong. But it's a terrible, like, I think the How to Win Friends and Influence People has this manipulative title in a way, and I think that's the association that people have with it, and that's something that I think could be seen as, for me, that's something that would modify my behavior. Like, maybe one of the reasons why I haven't read that book, even though, I mean, it sounds like a boring book, but like, what I'm saying is that, like, one of the reasons I think I'm not drawn to that book is because it sounds like a boring book. But I think the other thing is because of the moral judgment that might be put on someone who has read that type of book. So those are the types of things that I'm thinking about when it comes to this agency video, because not only does it constrain my agency in a way that I think is detrimental to me, but it's also interesting because Anna Howard talking about agency is something that I think a lot of self-improvement content that is aimed at teenage and men in their 20s also talk about, and it's just filtered through a completely different lens, which was super interesting. So yeah, those are my thoughts for today. Very raw, unfiltered, and yeah, maybe a bit messy.